Whoever you are, come travel with me. Traveling with me, you find what never tires. The earth never tires. The earth is rude, silent, incomprehensible at first. Nature is rude and incomprehensible at first. Be not discouraged. Keep on. There are divine things well enveloped. I swear to you, there are divine things more beautiful than words can tell. If you would rise and join with us in singing, we're singing our new hymn of the month. You may not have heard it, but by the time you get to the end of it, you will know it. Join in singing, Where You Go, I Will Go.
So welcome to the Unitarian Church. My name is Nathan. I'm one of your ministers. I'm pleased to welcome you today. The other of your ministers, Reverend Chris Long, was supposed to be here today, but a virus had a different thing to say about that. He is recovering. He's doing well, but he just didn't want to cough all over everybody. We have some really cool announcements, and I put them in chronological order because I know that's how you like it. Well, first, if you're a visitor, we're glad that you're here. If you want to know more about joining this church, please come talk to me. You can talk to Kathy. Either one of us can tell you good stuff. She'll tell you better stuff. Today, after service, and for those online, if you want to come in, if you live close enough for middle hour, everyone's making chalices. This whole month, we're sharing the offering with an organization that helped bring about the chalice. So we're going to make chalices. We're going to have the little kids in room 1 over there, and teenagers through adults in the fellowship hall. We're just doing arts and crafts today. Well, religious and crafts, I guess. So here's the chronology of what you can do every weekend forever. Next weekend is the end of our stewardship drive. There's still about 70 to 80 of you who have not turned in your pledges. If you haven't, there's a box back there, or online. You can just email me if you want and tell me your pledge, and we'll do it that way. But on the 12th, we're going to do a gumbo cook-off and an open mic night. That's this upcoming Saturday. The following Saturday, we're going to have songs on being human. We're bringing in a special guest to lead sort of an experiential thing to help us cultivate empathy and really practice our own humanness. Then, on the 27th, we haven't ironed any of the details out, but in the spirit of giving you something every weekend, that will be the first Sunday of Advent, which blows my mind because it is still July, to the best that I can figure. but we are going to do some version of a Christmas tree decorating party in 3 weeks. I'm not mentally there yet. I expect you may not be as well, but it is coming up. And then on December 5th through 9th, it's our turn at the Holy Grill. It's a soup kitchen, part of our role with the Interfaith Federation. So you can sign up at the card table over there if you would like to be part of serving food. Glad that you were with us. And I had divided out who was going to do what. And I told Reverend Chris he had until 8:59 to tell me if he thought he was healthy enough to be here. And so I gave Kathy some of it. I'm taking some of the others, so you're going to see some double duty here. Today for the lesson, I wanted to tell you the story of John Murray. Many of you may know this, but he was a Methodist minister in England. This is in the 1700s. And a member of his church got stolen away by a cult, is how they tell the story. This cult didn't believe in hell. And they said, John Murray, you're one of the smartest ministers we know. We want you to go convert her back. And he went to try to convert her back, and he didn't, and she converted him. I don't know anything about the religion she joined as an institution. I just know they didn't believe in hell. And he reread the Bible and saw that hell wasn't exactly in there either. And so he started going all over England preaching this new universalism. This is about the 1760s. During that time, his wife and child died. One of them got sick, the other was burned in a fire. He went into so much debt caring for them that he went into debtor's prison. He was excommunicated by the Methodists, and he said, I'm done. I quit. No more minister for me. This is over. So he got on a boat. It was called the Hand in Hand.
Of all the details to ask,
That's the one. I have it written down on my thing, but I left my notes over there. Anyone know it's the Hand in Hand? All right. Well, it's the something. And so he went on this ship. Do you know it? No.
I was saying there was a boat.
There was a boat. He went on a boat. It was a wind-based boat. They were heading ship. Is there a difference?
Boats are little ships.
All right. This is a. All right. Okay. It was a ship, not to be confused with a boat, because it had to go over the Atlantic. Are we good? It was the Hand in Hand. We have internet, or you just dug deep in your brain. All right. So the sound booth has told us it was the Hand in Hand. He was headed for New York, but the winds changed. He got stuck in New Jersey. This is. Hang on. No. I have no vested interest in the New York, New Jersey thing. It's just not where he intended to go. So he went ashore. This is not that interesting, people. He goes ashore in one of the New England areas that everyone fights about, apparently. And he shows up at a man's house because he was looking for supplies to refill the ship. And the man was this very eclectic man named Thomas Potter, who he was illiterate, so he would have people read him the Bible. And he had learned from reading the Bible that there was no hell. There's a little group of Universalists started by a man named George de Benneville in the kind of Philadelphia area, but they never started any churches. But so he may have gotten the ideas from them, but he had a vision from God that if he built a chapel, a minister would come and preach universalism in that chapel. The cynical version is he would always host these people in his house, and his family told him, you cannot have any more people in the house, go build something somewhere else for them to go be. So for whatever reason, he built a chapel, and John Murray happened to show up at this house looking for supplies, knocks on the door. I don't know how things work in New Jersey, but apparently he needed to stay overnight. And the whole night, Thomas Potter kept saying, "You're the minister that God sent to me to preach in my church. Would you preach?" And John Murray kept saying over and over and over again, "No, I'm not. I gave that up. I'm not doing it." Eventually, he relented and said, "Fine, if the winds haven't changed in the morning, I'll preach." Morning came, winds had not changed. He was still in New Jersey. Lovingly, for you New Jerseyans, he enjoyed all of the fine things of New Jersey, of which I know none. Give me one. What's the thing good about New Jersey? Online people, there's someone from New Jersey in the fourth row. They have great what? They got lakes and a something galleries. And peaches. And there's beaches and all sorts of stuff. There may not be peaches there. I may have misheard. And there's great people, although most of them came to Louisiana, so that's complicated. Okay, it's the Garden State, so he sees these gardens. Anyway, he fell back in love with preaching so much that he started going all over what was then the country, which is really Massachusetts through Delaware, and preaching and starting up Universalist churches. So without him, and more specifically without him getting lost, and I guess without New Jersey and without Thomas Potter, we may not have the universalism that would have merged with the Unitarianism that makes this religion possible. That is your lesson for today, with a very strange amount of detour in New Jersey. Thank you for going with me on that. And for our stones, first, yesterday, you can watch this online, we had a memorial service for Mary Catherine Politz. She was a member of this church for at least 10 years. She died after a long illness, and we were able to memorialize her yesterday. You can still watch that service if you'd like. If you would come place a stone. We have good and bad news. First, Marla and Tim Elsie have a new grandson. Bo Scott Elsie, if you would place a stone for him. Also, we have heard sad news. Carol Harrison has been placed in hospice. She's suffered from Parkinson's for a long time. I was able to visit with her this weekend. So we're thinking of her and her family wherever they happen to go next. And we will let you know when or if she does, when it does happen. So this ritual we have is open to everybody, visitor and member alike. Those who are online, type it right into the chat. We invite those of you who wish to come forward either along the west or the east wall. Take a stone, let it represent whatever's on your heart or your mind, place it in the chalice bowl. We now invite those who wish to come forward as we place stones. We say together, with hope to make this a better world, we light this flame. Its light is a symbol of the power of love.
Here in this sanctuary of ancient dreams and wisdom and beauty, we come to grow, to be healed, to stretch mind and heart, to be helped in our own continuing struggles for meaning and for love, to help build a world with more justice and mercy in it, to be counted among the hopers and the doers. In the face of cynicism, brutality around us and within us, we seek to align ourselves with a living community that would affirm rather than despair, that would think and act rather than simply adjust and succumb. Here we invite the spirit of our own humanity and the healing powers under, around, through, and beyond it to give us nerve and grace, the toughness and sensitivity to search out the truth that frees and the life that maketh all things new.
Let me also give some credit to Kathy. I handed her these readings at about 8:55, so thank you. So start today's service with a bit of the flip I told you about. So I, as your second minister, was very used to preaching once a month. I, as your senior minister, am not used to preaching every single week. And I did 3 in a row, and this was Reverend Chris's week, and he's sick. And so we agreed to switch. So this is 4 in a row. So if you're already sick of hearing everything I have to say, I'm sick of saying it. I'll be refreshed in 2 weeks, and you'll have new exciting things. But it turns out good because next weekend's my kid's birthday, and that way I get to not have to write a sermon for it. But we just did the whole swap. So everything that I was going to say next week, I'm saying now, and everything that he was going to say this week, he's going to say then. Does that make sense? So let me tell you what I was planning for next Sunday. I originally called the service Our Path Forward because I expected terrible results from the election that's coming up on Tuesday. When I conceptualized this service, I thought we would need time to process how these elections went. And if the polls are telling us anything, I think they're going to be rough. Also, I was not, please do not vote me out as your minister. I was not expecting LSU to win last night. So, online people, someone really, from the choir, really gasped at that one. So I did not prepare for people to be excited either. So we'll see how the tone of this works. I was expecting to plan to preach to tender hearts because I was expecting very disappointing results. So I also want to bring up an important point of emphasis, that there is a fundamental difference. There are sort of Venn diagrams that sometimes overlap, sometimes don't, between liberal theology, which is the belief in multiple truths and a non-coercive religion, and liberal politics, which is a totally different thing that we are not talking about. The church should always, I'm going to mix up my liturgical year a little bit, no matter which ideological party wins, the church's role is always to hold Pontius Pilate accountable for killing Jesus. In other words, the church's job is to hold the state accountable. Always. Any religion, Unitarian Universalism included, renders itself irrelevant by endorsing any political candidate or any partisan ideology. So it is, we need to live in a diverse church politically, so that if I preach on a thing that is political but not partisan, like guns or abortion or whether or not gay people are allowed to exist, or whatever the thing is, it's important that we have diverse political views within the congregation so that I can be held accountable to make sure I'm not preaching on a partisan talking point rather than a deeper theological point. Because no matter who wins the elections Tuesday, our job as a church is to hold them accountable to something greater than the status quo. I'm also not prepared to be disappointed by the individuals who are elected, I am prepared to be disappointed by ideologies that are fueling individuals and how they get elected. So I am from Louisiana. I am used to being disappointed in major elections. I came of age at a time when we had to vote for a criminal because it was more important that he become governor than the former grand whatever of the Ku Klux Klan. So that is where I cut my teeth on understanding disappointment among my people. So I am ready to be disappointed by this election because one of the major ideological strategies that is being utilized to amass power is to target the marginalized. So an example would be there is a huge emphasis right now in the elections all over the country on crime. Not crime as crime, but crime as a substitutionary word for black people wearing hoodies. Mass shootings are up. That is not being talked about as an increase in crime, although that is very much a crime. The ideology that is being pushed to get people elected results in real death and real destruction in our country, and it should not ever reward someone with elected office for using that. And that is to say nothing of how our elected officials have utilized and used trans children and marginalizing them to further get elected. Also, I do not believe in red and blue. I believe red and blue is an easy tool to cover up what is actually happening in a particular local community. The political interests of Connecticut, California, or New Mexico are fundamentally different, even though they all fall under the category of blue. Similarly, Wyoming and Mississippi have very little in common, but both would be categorized as red. In a country that for centuries has used simple, color-based divisions to keep the people separate in an attempt to keep them from uniting to overthrow those in power, I am very skeptical of a new binary color definition of who people are. In Baton Rouge, most of the elected Democrats are black and the elected Republicans are white. Talking about red and blue here allows us to avoid talking about race. So when a few years ago in the Metro Council, every black member of the Metro Council walked out because Metro Council, the school board, and there's another one too, but they're all intentionally just a little more white than black, despite the fact that the majority of the city is black, in an attempt to keep power. But when the paper covered the 5 black members of the Metro Council walking out, they covered it as Democrats leaving, as a partisan issue, rather than as a racialized issue. In other parts of the country where everyone falls under the category of red or blue, I was talking to someone about one of the states out west, and he said that everyone there are Democrats. And so really the fight is between those with power and those without power among the elected representatives. But because everyone is considered blue, there is no ability to hold accountable those power amassing movements. Does that make sense? In other words, red and blue is not something that I want to perpetuate here in this church, and I think it brings us further away from where we need to get. Every Sunday, worship leaders here should give you the tools to make it through the week, to fill your bowl for whatever you may experience in this upcoming week. So today, I plan for us to spend some time exploring what it means to be engaged as a religious people when things may or may not go the way we had hoped. It is about charting our path forward, no matter what the world throws at us. It is about how we respond to apathy and cynicism and authoritarianism as a religious people. And with that, I'm going to go into the offering. It's a new month. We are sharing with the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee. I'll explain in a few weeks why we picked November for them. It's got to do with nostalgia for me. But this is an organization that is almost a century old in our association. They go into communities that are suffering all over the world, and they work with local leaders in those communities to do real and sustained justice work. The former president of the Unitarian Universalist Association became the president of the UUSC, and in between those two, he was the president of Amnesty International. So this is an organization that I cannot use words enough to describe how important it is, and they do it as Unitarian Universalists. Remember, we split everything right down the middle. I don't know what you gave for the Walls Project last month, but the month before was $1,700, which is phenomenal. Those of you online, there's going to be a little thing, right on the bottom of your slide. It says where you go to give. This morning's offering will now be gratefully given and received. So this is part 2 of our path forward, the grocery store. There is a local grocery store, and I frequent this grocery store, by the way, mostly because of convenience and I want to support a local business, but they have a policy not to accept food stamps. I don't understand why they do this. They have not responded to requests for more information on it, nor have they responded to requests for policy changes on it. While there are substantially more white people on food stamps, there is a narrative in this country that black people use food stamps and welfare, and I have a hard time seeing how this narrative does not play out in this predominantly white grocery store chain. But that is not why I'm bringing up the grocery store. I am bringing it up to set the environment, I'm bringing it up, what I just told you, to set the environment that the store owners have created for what I'm going to describe that happened. You see, often racism doesn't live in the obtuse. It lives in the subtle cracks and crevices of our lives. A few years ago, before the shutdowns, probably 2017, 2018, there was a black woman shopping in the store using a reusable grocery bag from Trader Joe's. Does anyone remember the story? Yep. And a white store clerk noticed her doing it and started yelling at her and accusing her of stealing. This interaction hit the local news. The grocery store, with a systemic history of prejudice, in my reading, was called out for one particular behavior of one particular underpaid employee towards one particular black person. The owners of the store quickly made statements that this did not reflect their values. When church members applauded them but asked what policy changes they would enact to ensure that this wouldn't happen again, they politely ignored these church members. The accusations launched against this grocery store had nothing to do with the systemic problems within the store, which would be nuanced and complicated and worthy of intense discourse. Instead, the story had everything to do with one individual's interaction, and it was an interaction that the store owner admitted was wrong and attempted to rectify. A day or so after the story broke, I made the mistake of going on Nextdoor. For those of you who don't know what Nextdoor is, it is an app that is designed for neighbors to talk to each other. To the best that I have figured, it does 3 things really well. It allows people who want to sell things at their curb to sell things. It allows people who are concerned about suspicious people in their neighborhood, usually it's a code for black people, to point it out. And the third, and this may be specific to where I live, but it is an opportunity for people to complain about how they left a gun in their car unlocked, and then when they say someone stole, when they say someone stole their gun, then everyone berates them for leaving a gun in an unlocked car. I don't go on the app very often anymore because that's the majority of the discourse. No money for this church was paid for by that app, by the way. Anyway, on this day in 2016, 2017, a man started a post decrying how unfair it was that this grocery store was targeted by the media. He demanded a reverse boycott and called for every other person to go and support this store. And that specific behavior is at the root of what I had not been able to articulate about what bothers me about Louisiana political discourse in the 40-something years that I have been here. He brought into crystal clear clarity the interactions that I have had with extended family members my whole life that always result in them rolling their eyes whenever they hear about a political leader or a political movement that will somehow result in someone who is poor or marginalized getting access to more power or wealth. Or when do you know the eye rolling that I'm talking about? Yeah. It played into that partisan bullying I experienced growing up, fueled by AM radio hosts like Rush Limbaugh. The problem at the root of that post and that call and all of this, I think, is cynicism. More specifically, the tool of cynicism as a strategic anesthetic against injustice and generalized adversity in our world. That specific cynicism, when a man hears about a woman being targeted because she is black, and a store being held accountable for it, and the owners admitting that it was a problem. So basically, he hears about an injustice, a simple, not very nuanced or complicated injustice. And this person's response was to double down and distrust any attempt to call it out, and to come in support of an injustice that literally nobody asked for. That cynicism that I saw, it's this idea that no one can have good intentions, or if they do, those intentions will one day be taken advantage of. That is at the core of the thing that bothers me the most about politics in Louisiana and religious discourse in Louisiana. And Unitarian Universalists are not immune from this. Cynicism shows up in this church when we talk about how we are all like-minded, and maybe I see it differently because I hear from many of you, and I know how much you disagree on everything from where the flowers go to what kind of coffee we have. Like if we cannot agree on where the benches go, we're not all like-minded people. The cynicism shows up in how we talk about how this is a safe place, as if all of the people we live around are unsafe. The cynicism shows up less in this particular congregation and more in Unitarian Universalism in general, in the way that Unitarian Universalists always find a way to undermine their leaders, to make sure that we keep our churches small and irrelevant. Once again, not this church, but the faith as a larger tendency. I also think cynicism is at the root of our political divisions and our religious divisions. It is a poor coping mechanism, and it is what we as a religious people must work at undoing. So the question we will explore in the second half of the service is, what is the Unitarian Universalist answer to cynicism? How do we engage in a world with an open heart and heal some of those divides? So right where you're seated, let's go ahead and sing this next hymn to get us in the mode for thinking that way.
Would you join me in a moment of prayer and reflection? The God that we know when we see love and kindness and hope and family, mystery named and unnamed, believed in and not. Whatever it is that holds us together as a people, be with us on this day. And take us back to that first day when we were born. Every one of us, regardless of the relationship with our parents, regardless of whether we are biologically connected or families through choice. Be with us on that day that we were born. And help us to envision that love that surrounded us when we entered this world. And help us to know that that love has always been with us and will always be with us. No matter what happens, no matter the heartbreak, no matter the betrayals. Help us to know that as we enter into the next chapter in our lives, and even through our own death, we are held in a great love that nothing can take away. May we be at peace. Amen.
There is too much beauty in this world to give up on it yet. And it is always too soon to surrender to cynicism. Bring your doubt, your skepticism, your downright confusion, even your bitterness. But in the midst of all these, in the center, wrap your tender fingers around that still bright thread of hope. Feel in your heart that still steady hunger for something more. The vision we glimpse every day in the rising sun across the foothills, the light that spreads across the face of the one we love, the look of knowing all there is to know and still loving life, loving us just as it is, just as we are.
This church makes an awesome but very simple promise. There is nothing you can do that puts you outside of the realm of love and of justice. There is nothing that stops us from working towards bringing heaven on this earth. I understand the draw to cynicism. At times when I feel powerless, it is the only power I can grab. I understand the draw many people have towards a rigid religious understanding. I understand that draw towards a strict God that only allows very specific behaviors and very specific genders. I grew up trying to articulate this very abstract faith, and it rarely turned out successful. If I was struggling with addiction or depression, if I had made enough mistakes in my life that the only thing holding it together was a rigid, controlling God, if I felt like the only way I had out of this world would be that God, then I might turn to a different explanation than I have. Whenever I am meeting with a member of this church and they're trying to process something that is going on with a friend or a family member, and it usually involves a lot of theological judgment towards them, I usually ask if there's some sort of addiction or some sort of, I don't know how to put it. If I am struggling with addiction and it takes all of my energy to hold it together and I need strict rules to hold it together to keep myself sober, then I may turn to a religion that has strict rules to help keep me sober, to keep me okay. But this tendency to write off those who have the need for strict or rigid rules in their life, it has led to a lot of bad theology from Unitarian Universalists. There's an article in our magazine, The UU World. It came out about 15 years ago. It was called Not My Father's Church. Does anyone remember this? I'm sure all of you have read and studied every article that's come out in that magazine. But it was about a member of a UU church whose father was a long-haul trucker. And he said that our theology is too broad and abstract for someone like his father. He presumed that this church was for people whose careers allowed them to make choices. And therefore, a religion that allows you to make a choice would also be appealing. For this trucker, however, he had to do his job as a means of paying the bills. It was not fulfilling. And this article purports that he would not be fulfilled in a religion that wasn't rigid with a clear articulation of you have to do the things in this life, so once it is over, once whatever you do in a truck delivery or your haul is over, then you can be rewarded afterwards. Now, this article held up for me in much of my 20s. It was actually at a gathering of Unitarian Universalist Christians that it fell apart. Now, let me pause here to say that I do not identify as Christian. I identify as Unitarian Universalist, and that's it. But they put on these really good conferences, and this one happened to be in New Orleans, and so I decided to go. And I was talking to one of the attendees of this conference, and he said that he read that same article, and that for him, as a Unitarian Universalist, who is also a long-haul trucker, it offended him, because this is his religion. And this presumption that only a few people with very specific circumstances would be attracted to our faith is offensive even at its assumption of what different classes can comprehend. Which got me to thinking about the excuses I make for people who are attracted to rigid and restrictive theologies. Not about individual belief, but how those theologies play out in the world, and specifically how those theologies play out in the world in ways that hurt other people. It doesn't matter how depressed or addicted or stuck you may feel, there is always space in this loving theology for you, as complicated as this church and as complicated as the world may be. In other words, this religion has space for truck drivers and people who don't have culturally overvalued professions. And that is because the value of each person transcends career or circumstance. In a few minutes, we're going to sing a hymn to close. We're going to do an anthem. We've got some other stuff. But we're going to close with a hymn that elicited an interesting conversation with a church member. And it is interesting because it is conversations I've had internally for many, many years. And I'm sharing this with her permission. I don't remember if the hymn was I'll Fly Away or Will the Circle Be Unbroken, but both articulate a love of the next life and a disdain for this one. And she said she always struggles with these hymns, and more specifically, the articulation that there is a better life waiting for us after we die, and that there should be a push to ignore this life or to just make it through or to not savor it or to lose it, either through hopelessness or cynicism or something like that. Personally, I have spent years trying to figure out what to do with these hymns, like When the Saints, because I never knew the lyrics to the Saints Go Marching In. Because I just grew up, that was the song you did when you were excited and the Saints won or whatever. But there's a lot of Armageddon in that hymn. And I've always had to figure out, what do I do with that? A lot of these hymns, if not explicitly the ones I'm talking about, at least in genre and style, a lot of these hymns came out of enslavement. One of the forms of resistance that enslaved people articulated is that no matter how much torture enslavers in this world can offer, no matter how much suffering this world can offer, it still does not have triumph over you. It is still not more powerful than your soul or the love of God. The Unitarian Universalist antidote to cynicism and the rigidity of God is a promise that no matter your vocation, no matter whether you can quantify its value in this life or not, no matter how many times you have screwed up, you are still worthy of love. And whatever that thing is that drew John Murray to this country and still let him preach this radical idea that there is nothing you can do that's going to punish you forever? Whatever that thing is, that is something at the core of the promise we have. It's a promise that you are still complicated enough to do these grand theological equations, and you are still welcome in this world. I want the choir to come up and sing. I asked the choir to stay up here. They didn't know they were going to do this before the service. Well, you could start the... So I think that I tend to think of these hymns not as a promise of what will happen after we die, but a promise of what happens when we leave our old life behind. If John Murray had given up after he had lost quite literally everything, we would not have this religion today. We would not be together today. No matter the outcome Tuesday, it will not change some harsh realities of the world we are living in. The elections are merely a reflection of who we are as a people. Instead, the promise of this church, the way we find our path forward through the hardships of life and culture, is to know that no matter what you've gone through, we can build a better world. We can make meaning, we can find joy. No matter what, you are worthy of love and of justice. No matter what, we are connected and a part of something greater. Never let any false ideology or grotesque manipulation of theology or any articulation of difference allow you to forget that we are all interconnected. We are all in this together, and we owe it to ourselves and to our children to make this a better world. And know that we must keep unearthing cynicism wherever we see it. and let people know and let ourselves know that it is okay to love and to be hurt and to know that we can find love again and to fail better the next time. So it's not about this life ending. It's about letting go of the old life, the life John Murray left behind. It's about letting go of the things that are keeping you stuck. And to know that we are all in this together and we're going to make a better world. Amen. Let's sing. I invite you to rise. With the lyrics, though.
That you are loved, that you're worthy of justice, and the whole world needs to know that they are worthy of love and justice too. Go make the world a better place. Amen. Go in peace.